All right. We have one viral video guy and a cowboy. Well, actually a school board member who looks like a cowboy. I don't know. Maybe Chad, are you an actual cowboy? You tell me.
Well, I would think I don't qualify for that since I've never been on a moving cow before. I've ridden horses on occasion, but not quite a while. I do a lot of hunting and I do a lot of fishing and stuff like that. So
why do they, just curious, why do they call it cowboy when you ride a horse?
Because
I don't know.
Cows.
Because you rope cows. Okay, I guess. Okay, that's not the topic today, but I figured as long as I had you on, I might as well.
Well, actually,
okay,
while we're on it, I have actually worked cattle, so technically, I have been a cowboy before.
Okay. Well, we need.
I have too, but I was on a three-wheeler at the time, so you don't really say that that's cowboying. So.
Well, my aspiration someday is that the younger horse that I got a year and a half ago will someday be rideable to work cattle. So that's my goal. I want to be a cowgirl second half of life. So anyway, thank you for explaining that. I don't know. It's always great to have you guys on, especially when not only can you fill me in on that, but you can fill me in on this viral video where you see Paul in the middle of our trio here. He's also in this viral TikTok video, which at the time it was sent to me got 8 million views. How many are we at now?
It's still at 8. It's like at 8.1 or something.
They stalled you guys. I got a million views once on a YouTube video, and then it just nosed down.
We got that. I've never had anything like that happen before. What was funny too is after I sat down, I talked to my podcast producer, and I was like, you know, we needed a good moment, a viral moment to raise money for this lawsuit. And I was like, I just don't feel like I said anything that is going to go viral. And then the next day we had 8 million views. I was like, wow.
So you were planning to try to get this to go take off.
Yeah, we definitely wanted. I mean, we wanted something that was going to get people's attention because, I mean, what's going on in the McKinney School District is just outrageous, and it needs to be stopped. And we don't really have a lot of money, a lot of resources to fight this, and so we needed a viral moment to get people's attention.
All right, let's play it. You guys tell me what's going on here, okay?
All right.
And then let me know if you can't hear it. Let me back it up.
Okay. Our last speaker on the book issue is Paul Davis.
Thank you, Paul Davis. I'm a civil rights attorney, and Ms. Denkel, your outrageous display of tyranny and how you trampled on the rights of the public at the last meeting was shocking. I've never seen anything like it. It was like watching something out of a fascist dictatorship. You placed an unconstitutional restraint on First Amendment rights by disallowing signs, clapping, comments, and then you and your little pointing stooge over here had people removed physically. You used the McKinney police as your personal Gestapo to physically remove people that were wearing green. Those same rules were not applied to people wearing blue. For that, we have filed a civil rights lawsuit against you, and now my process server is going to serve you with that lawsuit right now, and we are going to hold you accountable. And we, the people, are pissed off. We are not going to put up with this type of behavior anymore. We're not going to have our rights trampled, and this is completely unacceptable from a public official. Thank you.
Our last speaker.
Okay, Paul. What was going on there?
Well, okay, so Chad and a couple of parents from McKinney ISD called me back in March and told me about this situation unfolding with the books. And, you know, Chad had been raising the issue of the books and had gotten a lot of pushback. And then apparently they were doing this, or they started this investigation into him, which was essentially a witch hunt. And so, you know, I'd never been to a school board meeting before. I'm not a parent. I'm a single 41-year-old male. And I went to the April school board meeting. That was from the May meeting, but I've never seen anything like it. I was so disturbed. I felt like I had like PTSD or something, not to minimize PTSD, but it was just like, it was that shocking to see what happened. I mean, she started this meeting. That was the school board president, Amy Denkel. And she announced, you know, because Chad had a lot of supporters there, a lot of people wearing green, and then there were people wearing blue, which supported her.
And this is her, right?
Yeah, this is Amy Denkel. Yeah. So she is, she'll say she's opposed to pornographic books, but she does nothing to remove them, and always comes up with excuses and persecutes people who oppose the existence of the books in the schools, including Chad. And so, she started this meeting and says, we're gonna, nobody is allowed to clap, nobody's allowed to say anything, like no crowd noise at all, and you can't bring signs in. But that was actually just like displayed outside. You cannot bring signs in, and if you say anything other than like your time speaking at the podium, or if you clap, you're going to get thrown out of the meeting. And then, so it was just crazy. It was like people would speak, and then she'd say, if you raise your hand if you agree with this person, like we're all like in kindergarten or something, so people would raise their hand, and inevitably people were murmuring and saying things and clapping here and there, and both sides were doing it. That was obvious to everybody in the room, but it was just crazy to watch, because she had this guy, Robert Montgomery, who's the head of security for MISD, just pointing. She said, you're going to point people out, whoever you point out, the police are going to remove. So he just starts pointing out people on our side, like only people that were wearing green or were obviously opposed to the books. And they, the police would come up to them, and the first person is Kevin Witt, one of our clients in a lawsuit, and he's just like, this is the United States of America. I have a right to free speech. Like, I'm not leaving. And they made him leave. They put their hands on him, dragged him out, and did the same thing to several other people. And it was just very, very disturbing to watch people removed because of their political view. It's one thing. I've researched this heavily. Unfortunately, you can actually, as a school board in these meetings, impose those types of rules. But what you can't, and you can remove people that violate them, but you can't do it because of their viewpoint. And that's what they were doing here.
I see. Okay, so let's talk about why you were talking about the blue and the green and the books and all that stuff. And there may be a lot of people watching who are not familiar with what's going on. So Chad, who are you and how do you enter this story, and tell us about the books?
Well, I'm the only conservative on the school board here in McKinney, and I try to watch out for the kids. I try to watch out for the voters, and try to watch for the money and things. The books was really a shock to me. I went in October with a with a parent, and actually went into our libraries and found that we did have the books there. And from that point on, I've been threatened by the school board. They've threatened to have me recalled. They said if I do anything else, this is not what they want. They said that I've acted up on too many occasions. And it's not just the books. It's, we have a high school where a lot of the kids are crossing across the street and there's no crosswalk there. And so we've probably gotten between 15 and 20 kids that are walking across. And I tried to get the city council to do something and wrote a letter to them on my school board stationery, which is right to do. And so the school board had a problem with me doing that. And so, I've been in this position about a year, and I just don't agree with what they're doing. They're basically a rubber stamp for whatever the administration wants. And having the pornographic books is obviously what the administration wants, because, this whole time, 9 months, they've been, they have made fun of parents that are standing up and reading the books. They've threatened me. They continue to crack down on parents that are making statements. And they seem to be getting worse and worse and worse as time goes by, including the mayor getting involved in it.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out a way to ask if you could go into a little bit more detail when you're saying pornographic books, but I don't want this to turn into pornographic material. So how could you explain to me a little bit more about why these books are so concerning for parents without going into too much detail? Can you help me understand like why you'd be like, this is obvious,
these are here's a great way to do it. Okay. I am all for classic literature, even if it's objectionable by some, and you have that with Mark Twain books. And I think they're classic pieces of literature that still need to be taught. The stuff that I'm seeing and that I found was The Bluest Eyes, and then another one which was absolutely gross. It's two parents, and the father's not interested in the wife anymore, and so they turn to their daughter and hold their daughter down and rape their daughter. That would be one example. They also talk about bestiality in that book. Another example is Queer Nation, and that's basically the Karma Sutra for, transgender and gay and lesbian. And, if you want to have that in your home, that's your business. But I don't think the school district has any business exposing minors to that material. And those materials were actually available to elementary schools on the internet.
Okay, so then you're saying that you guys have had discussions over the course of several months about removing the books. And are I'm sorry if I missed this, but are these in a library, or where are they available?
Well, they're in the library. They're also available in a few teachers have them in their actual classroom as well.
Okay. And how were you tipped off to the books? Who was the initial person that said, "Hey, these books are here and we need to get rid of them"?
Rachel Elliott called me up and she said, I bet because we see these things going on. And I had just, like 2 weeks before, I had received from a teacher a directive where their supervisor told them to use the personal pronouns for any student, whatever their preferred pronoun was. And if the kids were wearing furry animal costumes, that they were to address them as furries. And that kind of spurred on that we probably have these type of books in the library. And so we went to check it out.
Okay. And you're saying you're the only conservative on the school board. How do you define the other people, or how do you define yourself as a conservative? What is that? I guess how to tell me what that means in your opinion.
That's a great question.
In this particular position.
That's a great question. I'm a constitutionalist. I believe in the Constitution for everybody. So personal responsibility. If you make a mistake, that you correct the mistake and you be open and honest about it. As it applies to government, open and honest government as they're trying to make purchases of multi-million-dollar products. They need to open themselves up to review by parents, and I think that's where the rest of the board would really step away from me. They don't believe that they are to watch over the school district government at all. That the RFPs don't take second looks. That our school district has been following the law, and it has not. We've had several RFPs that have not followed the correct lawful process of going through. So it's that's how I would define a conservative. We've got people on there that say they're Republicans, but they don't act like Republicans should, which we end up saying that way too often.
Do any of them say, "Hey, if you're a constitutionalist, then you would be for free speech, and these books are an example of that, so they should stay"?
I have had, actually, the superintendent has actually said that, and that's fine for an adult. That is not fine for a minor. And if you want to look at and see some of the research studies talk about what pornographic materials does to a minor's mind when they're reading that or looking at those type of pictures, and there's no coming out of that type of stuff. So I would absolutely say that that's not a First Amendment right to look at whatever you want, and be able to use public money, be able to look at those things.
And if I may add something to that too, I mean,
Sure.
It's painful watching the board members talk about that particular issue and make that argument, because they say, "Oh, well, we can't be like the Nazis burning books." It's like, nobody's getting rid of these books. You can, if the parent wants the kid to read the book, they can get it off Amazon. They can go to, Barnes and Noble or wherever. We're not burning the books and banning them from society. We're just keeping them out of our school libraries because, they're not appropriate for children, and we don't want our taxpayer dollars going to that. There's a huge difference there. And then I've heard them compare. One board member said, "Well, if we remove these books, then we have to remove the Bible because there's sex in the Bible." And we're just like, there's not like, graphic descriptions of,
how to go about doing it.
Behavior in the Bible. I mean, it's not even close. It's ridiculous. Those are the ridiculous arguments that they make. It's embarrassing, honestly.
Okay, so there's two separate issues then here. One is this. You guys have a Give, Send, Go. So if people want to go check that out and participate in the work you're doing, they can do that. Legal battle to keep pornography out of our schools. And then there's the issue of how it's being dealt with the school board. Am I right? So there's these two separate storylines.
Correct. Yeah. So you have, the witch hunt they did against Chad, which we're looking at our theories to fight back against that. And I have two good theories in particular that we will most likely be suing them for as soon as we raise enough money to get that going. And then we have the First Amendment issue where, that I mentioned earlier, that was the viral video, and that lawsuit is ongoing, and I can go into depth on that. There's some pretty interesting issues in that lawsuit. And then, there would be the issue of actually getting the books out, which, we're looking at maybe doing some kind of civil rights, what we call Section 1983 lawsuit for the parents' right to not have their kids exposed to these books. So that's kind of an overview of the legal issues there.
Okay, yeah, let's go back to the video for a second. And I was going to, just for people who have joined us recently, play it one more time, but maybe we'll stop at different parts of it and you can kind of explain exactly what you're talking about. So here we go. Again, this is Paul at this McKinney School Board meeting. Oh, hang on. Let me turn the volume up so we can actually hear what's going on. Here we go.
Our last speaker on the book issue is Paul Davis.
Thank you, Paul Davis. I'm a civil rights attorney, and Ms. Denkel, your outrageous display of tyranny and how you trampled on the rights of the public at the last meeting was shocking. I've never seen anything like it. It was like watching something out of a fascist dictatorship. You placed an unconstitutional restraint.
Okay, so let's go back to that again. You already described, I think, a significant portion of what made you say that. But would you say it was an escalation of behavior you'd seen leading into that, or was it totally different on that particular day? I'm just curious how it compares to the way the school board meetings are often run, because I've been to some pretty ridiculous meetings as a TV reporter.
I'll have to let Chad answer that question, because that was literally the first school board meeting I've ever been to in my life, and I just could not believe my eyes. I just couldn't believe that they were removing people. It was obvious to everybody there that only people that were opposed to the books, which is opposed to Amy Dankel, the school board president's position, only those people were removed. At one point in the meeting, all of the blue shirts, we'll call them the blue shirts, those are the people that support Amy Dankel because they're all wearing blue shirts.
And why? Why are they wearing blue?
That's that's just the color of they formed a political action committee apparently for this.
Yeah, but Amy Dankel and Mayor Fuller, and then we have a strong leftist created a political action PAC, and so they're blue for the primary colors of our McKinney High School is why they're wearing blue.
Okay, gotcha. I see. Okay, continue. Sorry. And you guys are wearing green. How'd you pick that color?
And my last name's Green.
Oh, duh.
Real simple.
Yeah, not complicated. But what's funny about that part of the video, so, I put that video up and all of a sudden we got 8 million views and it was crazy. But I start going through my TikTok and Instagram and like looking at comments and all the, whatever you call it, duets and stuff. I can't tell you so many of the people that were fans of that video were radical leftists with like LGBTQ, rainbow stuff, like obvious Democrat, liberal, Marxist types. And I was like, what in the world? Because if they knew who I was, because I was fired for protesting on January 6th. I mean, it does not get more MAGA than Paul Davis. And I got all these leftists that are now fans of me. And I'm like, what the heck? So I thought about it. I was like, oh, you know what it was? Is because I didn't say anything political. I didn't make it clear like whose side who is on. But I did say like a fascist dictatorship. And most people on the left associate the word fascist with like the far right. So they thought I was attacking a far right school board president, which is actually just minor detail. People think fascism is a far right ideology. It's socialism. It's just nationalist socialism, which is a left wing ideology. So that's just a mislabeled term. But I just kind of an interesting point there.
Well, and to answer your question before, was this a gradual happening of removing parents? Yeah, it was. It started after I went into the library with a parent. That next board meeting, Amy Dankel and the guy they're trying to make the next superintendent in the school district had a meeting with the police chief, apparently a secret meeting before the school board. And that they started heavily trying to find things to remove people on then. And then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. At one time, I think there was something like 15 police cars outside. And now that they know that we're saying, hey, you've got this many police cars, they're now trying to park the police cars on the other side of the building so people don't see them. I mean, it's really crazy.
Okay. And what are the police saying through all this? I mean, are they telling you sort of over the shoulder, like, sorry, we're doing this. We think this is a little egregious use of law enforcement, or do they seem like they're buying into like what they're doing? Like, you guys are raucous and need to be disciplined. Like, what's your sense on how those folks? Because did you serve Paul? Was that an entire police department that you say you're serving in this video?
We have not. We probably could serve the police department. It's just, the more people you sue, I'm only a single practitioner. I have a new associate starting on Monday, but as of right now, I'm a solo practitioner. And so we based on what Chad just said, which I'll probably get with you and get a little more detail on that meeting, because I may want to put that in our amended complaint. But we have only sued the 3 police officers that dragged my clients kicking and screaming, out of the meeting. And they are not apologetic at all. All 3 of my clients filed grievances against them with the police department. The police department did their investigation and found that the officers, didn't do anything wrong. But, it's kind of the issue. It's kind of a technical issue, because in all the research that I've done, and I did not know this before, because I've practiced law for 10 years. I've just never specifically dealt with the issues in this case before. So a school board meeting, it's surprising. Most people don't know this. It's what's known as a limited public forum in constitutional law. So it's a forum that the government has specifically opened up for people to come talk about specific issues. And so in a limited purpose public forum, the school board has wide latitude to impose rules of decorum. And so here she imposed these pretty draconian rules, but it was, legal for her to do that. But so it was legal for the officers to remove people that violated the rules, because, and they can use force. They actually can, in this case, they grabbed the arms of my clients. They, grabbed their bodies. They picked them up in some cases. They are actually allowed to do that. They just cannot, which shocks most people. Most people are like, what? That's crazy. Like, how can you just drag a person from a school board meeting? And, they actually can do it. Your remedy, if you think that your rights have been violated, you can file a lawsuit against them for violating your First Amendment rights. What you can't do is resist arrest. You can't say, I'm not leaving, and then resist being taken out of the building. So the issue in this lawsuit is basically they were removed because of their viewpoint, and that you cannot do. That is illegal, and that's what we're proving in this case.
Yeah, they had school district employees going on and pointing out to the officers people that they wanted removed, and the other side would do the same things, and they weren't being removed at all. It was completely one-sided. And I that education code that talks about that says if there being a disruption, a disruption is not somebody making a one-word comment on what somebody is speaking of. A disruption's actually being a disruption, and we really haven't had that. So, I mean, I think there's been one instance really of a disruption, and we know some people inside the force that don't want to go to the school board meetings because they don't want to be put in the position to have to deal with that. So, I don't blame them. I mean, that last school board meeting, I told them, I said, you're going to have to make a choice between the Constitution and what the school board members or your chief is telling you to do. And, if they're truly not being disruptive, then you shouldn't be touching them. You shouldn't be laying on hands on them. You shouldn't be doing any of that. So I think first thing for us in McKinney is, number one, I need to win this lawsuit against them. But number two is we need to remove these people. They just, it's very clear they don't want parents to be involved unless those parents are going to do whatever the administration says. And, I personally don't agree with the administration on a lot of things. Number one, we're the only large B-rated district in Collin County. It makes no sense for us to be there, except that we seem to be focused on this pushing the social progressive view through and making that part of our schools. And I just don't agree with that at all.
Real fast, where is McKinney? Can you explain to people, give us a point of reference?
It's about 15, 20 miles north of Dallas.
Okay. So it's kind of, I mean, does it have sort of that metro influence to it? Because I wonder about Texas. I'm not really quite sure about you guys. We're considering moving there, but it just seems like I've had buddies who are like, yeah, I'm going to move to Texas for freedom. And then they get to Texas and they're like, wait a second, so I don't really know what to think of Texas anymore.
Well, it has changed a lot in the last 5 years. It used to be that the leftists used to be fairly quiet about their leftism. And I would say in the last 5 years, they've become very pronounced in how right their leftism is and how it should be, used and driven in everyday society and required. You can have that view, and that's fine if you have that view, but you don't need to be pushing it on me or my kids or anybody else. And that's the problem, is if you're going after our kids and you're trying to teach them this stuff, that is not good citizenship. You're not teaching them good citizenship having those views. The Constitution is the right way to teach citizenship. Using the Constitution, it is a plumb line trying to attain to a place that really no government has been able to do. And that's the people are essentially the government, or have the authority. And so, I think we really need to be bold about correcting this issue, and the conservatives that truly are conservative, it's kind of a buzzword everybody uses now, need to actually stand up, because, you can talk about being conservative all you want, but until you get up and they're throwing darts at you, I don't see the proof yet.
Well, Paul is actually describing kind of an interesting phenomenon that I see too. Because my podcast, I would say, attracts people on the left and the right, but they align on civil liberties. And I think we're seeing this interesting trend toward, I don't know whether you would call it like the populist left and the populist right, or what it is, or people on the left who would say, real liberals, not sort of like the neoliberal Clinton Democrat type. So I'm just curious, are you seeing that too in Texas? Are you seeing, because you just described like what you called leftist, but would you say there are also like liberals in Texas who kind of are aligned with the same civil liberties concerns that you as a conservative are?
Sure. And I would probably use two different communities to describe that. So if you were talking about the El Paso community, those are more like the Clinton Democrats. You can be, I've got a ton of friends down there and I love them to death. And on community level issues, we agree on a whole lot of stuff. It's only on national level stuff that we really kind of separate in those areas. Honestly, here in McKinney, the people that are left are hard left. I mean, they are crazy nuts left. And it comes out in multiple ways. this being able to teach whatever they want to kids. And, it comes out most often saying that the educators are the professionals and parents should have no input into their child's education. That's been said several times on social media, on Facebook. And that's utterly ridiculous. What they want to do is drive their agenda through and have us just sit there and take it. And I'm not okay with that.
Here's what's going on in Texas. To your original question, because it's just like Texas is a very conservative state by its makeup, by its population. But what's happening is the same thing that's happening across the country. Democrats are using tactics to rule by minority. They're doing it with Soros money. So, what's going on in McKinney, people are just shocked. They're like, how could the school board in McKinney be a bunch of leftists? And it's because nobody pays attention to school boards except the liberals. So, the Soros organizations and other similar organizations figured out, nobody votes in these elections. So let's get all of our people in there and we'll turn out the vote and we'll take over these school boards and then we'll start indoctrinating the kids. And then that way the next generation that's how we're going to turn Texas blue, is we're going to, corrupt the minds of the children who are soon going to be the voters. And then you got, our feckless Republican establishment in the state of Texas. Everybody, it makes me so angry because you go to another state or talk to somebody from another state, they're like, oh, you guys are so lucky you have Governor Abbott. I'm like, you know nothing about Governor Abbott. He's a rhino. He is not a conservative. I mean, I could go on and on about that. But then you have our legislature too. They give Democrats control over committees. They refuse to actually pass the conservative agenda. They just stall everything. So, and then you have, the big cities controlling all the elections, which is a problem as well. So it's just the Democrats pouring a lot of money in here. Texas is their holy grail. If they can flip Texas blue, then they flip the entire United States. So they're pushing hard here.
Yeah, and I'll roll out the welcome mat for you. We need every conservative to move here we can. So, if you're bold and you're going to stand up, that's the type of conservatives that we need. We don't need any Republicans that hang back and they vote every once in a while and you don't really know what side they're on. We've got plenty of those. So it's the conservatives that we need.
My old boss called me a right-wing liberal, and I never really quite understood what that meant because I've always felt very politically homeless. I like, for instance, regenerative farming, for instance. I like to buy direct from ranchers. I'm all about where my food comes from, and they call me hippie for that. But we have firearms, and I'm all about the Constitution. So then people call me a right winger for that. I don't really know where I belong anymore, except for just by myself, all by myself.
I think a lot of people are confused about what defines right and left. I was actually talking with somebody about this last night, and I was thinking I'd make a video on it. Traditionally, so like when we think about right and left on the American political spectrum, it's generally the further left you are, the more you are for government control over people's lives. The more right you are, the more you are for individual rights against, the government. And so it's like on the far left, you got like the extreme left. Far left is going to be, socialism. That's far left. Then extreme left is going to be communism, and actually fascism is an extreme left position, contrary to popular belief. And then if you go on the right side of the spectrum, then you have like libertarian would be far right, and extreme right would actually just be anarchy, because that's total lack of government. That's how I've learned it. I don't know if that comports with y'all's understanding, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, I think I'm probably like you, Allison. I think when I did the 40 questions, I fell really close to the libertarian, kind of a little bit in between, but farther on the libertarian side than I did on the conservative side. So, I guess if you mix your own fertilizer with beer and molasses, then you probably may be a little more libertarian than everybody else, than other Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I was just thinking about earlier today before we started this video, I had my daughter and I were out by our little, pool that I bought her. And, we were we got our garden with the organic soil, and our compost from our buddies who raise sheep. And then she's also found shell casings from her dad's, shooting, and she like made fingernails out of it. And so I'm like, this is, that basically sums up our family. So I'm not really sure. Like I said, but I think the categories oftentimes are developed in a way to keep people fighting with each other so that they're not necessarily looking up. You know what I mean? They're not necessarily looking up at the power structure that is very similar despite their categories in trying to control people. And then we just argue amongst each other. So we're not paying attention to, and like you said, Paul, I mean, that's a great way to keep people from really caring about what's going on at their school board, being invested in community politics, local politics. You're constantly fixated on the presidential election or what Nancy Pelosi's doing, stuff like that. And then it just, the cycle just rinse, repeat, and everybody, basically thinks that you think you're participating because you're like raging online and you're watching your Fox News channel or your CNN or whatever, but like nothing's changing in your local community because you're not getting involved and you're pointing fingers in places that actually are not necessarily what's going to maybe change things immediately for you guys. Okay, let me keep watching this because I have another question about what you were saying about resisting arrest. So hang on one second. Let's give you a couple more seconds.
On First Amendment rights by disallowing signs, clapping, comments, and then you and your little pointing stooge over here had people removed physically. You used the McKinney police as your personal Gestapo to physically remove people that were wearing green. Those same rules were not applied to people wearing blue. For that, we have filed a civil rights lawsuit against you, and now my process server is going to serve you with that lawsuit right now, and we are going to hold you accountable. And
Okay. So I had Catherine Henry on. She's a constitutional attorney who was arrested, and she was helping people petition to get signatures on a petition to be put on a ballot to restrict government, or specifically the governor's emergency powers in Michigan. And so she ends up having these charges dropped after this long legal battle to prove that she was allowed to be there. But that moment where she was arrested, she got really scared and she's like screaming and her kids watching in the car, and it was a mess. And it seems like really unfair to me that if you know that you have the constitutional right to be where you are, but you just have to go along with the arrest because you're not allowed to resist arrest. I mean, I guess what's your recommendation for people, Paul? It seems unfair.
It does seem very unfair, and I've had to explain this to my clients in this case. The law is set up so that we have the best benefit for society. I mean, that's what it's supposed to be. And so, you don't really want to have it so that people can just make subjective determinations about, well, I have the constitutional right to be here, so I'm going to refuse the order of this officer, because that's going to lead to chaos. Because the police officer is trying to make a decision in that situation. Like, let's just take this particular situation. So it's clear from the facts here. I do believe that the police officers all knew that these people were being ordered removed, because of their viewpoint. But the police, but the police officer at the end of the day is really, they're doing their job. They're doing what they're there to do, which is enforce the rules of the forum that they're in, but they're doing it in a way that's uneven in this position. So, but you don't want to just tell the public, hey, if you think you have the right to be somewhere and you can resist arrest, because that's going to lead to violence. That's going to lead to a conflict. So the remedy is, it's like, yeah, it really sucks if you get targeted by a police officer and they ask you to leave an area you have a right to be in. You really have to do it. And then your remedy is to sue them for violating your constitutional right, your First Amendment right to protest, or your right to free speech. So that's kind of how the legal system's set up. So if you're taking matters into your own hands and resisting arrest, that's not going to put you in a good legal position.
Yeah, I mean, I totally hear you on that one. I also just think it sucks for people that you have to then get your give, send, go going, or you have to find the financial means to take it to court. And then you're not even guaranteed that that's going to be fair. I mean, it seems like a big mess right now.
It is. It's very frustrating because the government has basically insulated themselves against the people. And that's it's very unfair because, like, take this situation. We're suing government employees, right? And they all have insurance policies that pay for their litigation. If and when Chad sues the other school board members, they're going to have public funds for that most likely. It's just, the government has unlimited resources to defend these lawsuits, and we the people have to scrounge around and find funds to do it. And it's really unfair. And another horrible example of this, just how the government just insulates itself against the people. So I brought, right after the 2020 election, I brought a lawsuit challenging the 2020 election results. And the problem is our plaintiffs who are voters, the judge said they did not have standing to bring this lawsuit because there's a principle in constitutional law, if your grievance, or it's really federal civil procedure, if your grievance that you're suing for is something that's common to everybody, then you don't have a claim. That's the state of the law. So it's like they're saying, well, if you're saying that everybody got defrauded in this election, then you don't have a claim because that's something the government would have to investigate and prosecute. But obviously, Merrick Garland's not going out of his way to go expose election fraud and prosecute people who participated in it. So we have no remedy. Basically, it's ridiculous.
Okay. Well, I think that was basically the end. Let's just play the last part.
Okay.
People are pissed off. We're not going to put up with this type of behavior anymore. We're not going to have our rights trampled. And this is completely unacceptable from a public official. Thank you.
Okay. So what happens then? What happens? Does she call for recess? Does she just keep going? Because she seems like totally unfazed by the whole thing.
She just kept going. I mean, some people said they saw her like shaking and stuff. I don't know about that. I just think she's just like, whatever, I'm getting sued. I have insurance for this and our lawyers will take care of it. I don't know what her mindset is. But yeah, she has responded to the lawsuit, and so has Robert Montgomery, who was the one I referred to as her little pointing stooge, because he was the one pointing people out to get removed, and then the 3 police officers who participated. And I guess in light of Chad's statement earlier about the meeting, maybe we'll add I'm amending our complaint on Monday, so we may add the police department based on that. But yeah, go ahead.
So the TikTok lower third area, the graphic, the text on there says that you did serve the police. So you didn't serve the police just as school board president?
No, we did. Yeah,
okay.
We served in the live meeting. I only served the school board president. I was going to mention the police, but you only have a minute to speak, so there's only so much you can get out in a minute. But we did serve one of the officers that night, and then we didn't know the identity of 2 of the other ones. We had to look through video to get that. So then we served the other 2. And then, so right now they have filed, we sued them for, violating First Amendment rights. So like all the unreasonable restrictions on the ability to speak out and everything, and then retaliating against people for speaking out. And then, we sued them for excessive force because 2 of my clients had said that, they really forcefully grabbed them and hurt them. And then we sued them for viewpoint discrimination. But basically, it was an equal protection claim for unequal treatment. And so after reading through, then they filed a series of motions to dismiss. After reading through them and researching all those issues, because a lot of times, as a plaintiff's attorney, or if you're on the plaintiff's side, you're kind of figuring out what's going to stick. You're trying to bring every claim that you could possibly make, and then at the motion to dismiss stage, you look at what they're saying and you read the case law, and sometimes you're able to do a deep dive beforehand, but I just I don't have the manpower to do that. I don't have the capacity to do that. So we just do the best we can. It looked like all those claims are viable, but basically what it comes down to now, as I explained earlier, they can make those rules. They can remove people from the meeting. They can use force to do it. That's all legal. What is not legal is doing it because of the plaintiff's viewpoint. So right now we're dropping everything except for the just viewpoint discrimination claim under the First Amendment.
Okay. Before I go to my locals page and take some questions from people there, is there anything else you guys want to add about big picture, what people should take away from that video? That a lot of people just watched and they were like, holy shit, that guy just served a lawsuit. But what big picture, what should people take away?
Well, one thing I did forget to mention, the plaintiffs in this case tried to return to the board meeting the next month, and they got criminally trespassed and told they could never return to a board meeting in the future. So that's something we're asking for injunctive relief. But I mean, big picture, it's just, this is what's going on in McKinney is going on all over the state of Texas, all over the United States. I mean, I get calls from parents all over the state of Texas that these same issues are happening in their school board. And this school board it's rife with corruption. I've had people on my podcast talking about just the construction contracts that were awarded. I mean, just for instance, they built a $70 million football stadium, and within, I don't know if it was 1 year or 2 years, within a pretty short amount of time, the whole thing apparently needs a new foundation now. And it's just, there's no transparency with how they select the contractors. There's just, it's open for rampant fraud is what I'm saying. Kickbacks. What typically happens, and I'm not saying this exact thing happened in McKinney, but I suspect it probably did. It happens a lot over school boards all over the state of Texas. They get these big construction contracts. They have their preferred contractors. Those contractors make big donations to those school board members, campaigns. And there's kind of this, you scratch my back, I scratch yours type of thing. So
we actually had the gentleman in charge of buildings and RFPs for all that type of stuff stood up in public forum and said that he wasn't confident any of the other bidders could actually do the job other than the contractor that he chose. They were not the low bid. So I just found that funny because that contractor has screwed up several multi-million-dollar contracts in the area with other districts. So it just, I sure wish he hadn't said that publicly like that because, usually you'll get a higher price every time now. Allison, is it okay if I thank a couple of people real quick?
Yeah, please do.
Look, I this has been a really tough process for me being on the board just a year. And then really, I had a couple of our elected officials reach out to me. Judge Chris Hill, who's our county judge. I just want to thank him, and Daryl Hale, who's one of our county reps. Angela Paxton, Senator Angela Paxton, started working heavy on getting the pornography out. And I know that she and Matt Shaheen are going to try to put forward some legislation in this next legislature to start dealing with this. I mean, ultimately, the board is not scared because there's no penalties enforced, and there's no penalties that are strong at all for the board. And if you and I would go to jail over this thing, giving these type of materials, then the board members should be going to jail when they have knowledge that something is there and they don't do anything to remove it. So Matt Shaheen is our state house rep, and without me even asking him, he had contacted several of the companies that were sending us library books and had contacted the superintendent of McKinney ISD. And I just want to say how much I appreciate their support and working with them and how they stepped up for the people in McKinney and Collin County through this.
Okay, let's go to some other questions real fast. There was one person who said, not a question, but convey to them they have become heroes to many. This is the way we need to take our country back. So you got some support there. Is there evidence the police are colluding with her? Can the police be sued for enforcing an unjust law? Wishing you success. Okay, so we have talked a lot about that, but I don't know if you discussed collusion specifically.
Yeah, that would be so. Chad, maybe you could give a little more detail of. You mentioned a meeting between the police department and Dankel and somebody else.
Well, yeah, the police department and Dankel. So the police chief, Dankel, and the person that's in charge of security for the school district all had a private meeting before one of the board members.
Is that Ron Montgomery in charge of security?
Yeah, he's in charge of emergency security. Yeah. And the very next board meeting is where Mayor Fuller started showing up. And yeah, that's a problem when the mayor is running a PAC, but also has power over the police chief. That sure seems like there's collusion between the school district and the mayor's office and the police. Yeah, it sure seems like that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess I had never really thought about the fact that police chiefs are appointed by mayors, and then you have the mayor and the school board and these other agencies. It's just an interesting point. I'm going to look into that topic more, because I think that there's probably a lot of stories out there where you could see some issues. Okay. How difficult was it to draft a lawsuit like this? How much money do you expect it to cost you? Can the average citizen reasonably expect to be able to put up the same kind of fight?
That is actually a great question, because that dovetails perfectly into something I'm working on right now. Because what I've seen, so, I've had my own law practice since February of 2021, because I was, as I mentioned earlier, fired for protesting January 6th from, what was basically a dream job. I was human resources director and in-house counsel at Goosehead Insurance. It was like the best job ever. It was just going from a law firm environment to that job. I was happy as a clam in high tide, but they fired me for protesting. And then peacefully, mind you, I didn't go into the Capitol. I was just standing outside, basically. And then, so, one problem I've seen, though, since I've started my own practice, is so many people have these issues where, in the climate of our society, they're being persecuted for their conservative values. They're being persecuted for exercising their constitutional rights, like my plaintiffs and my clients in this case. But most people cannot. The average person cannot afford an attorney for this type of thing. And sadly, there just are barely any conservative attorneys out there that are really stepping up to the plate, unless there's a big payoff. There are some good ones out there. Don't get me wrong, but just not nearly enough. And so what I have determined is maybe the best contribution that I can make is I was thinking of just starting this program of like, be your own attorney and go just give people an overview of how the legal system works, how a lawsuit works, like what do you need to know? And I think that lawyers love to act like practicing law is like the hardest thing in the world. And, there are some very difficult technical things about it, but you don't have to be like, people go to law school to learn about they're an expert on lots of different areas of law. If you just have your own legal dispute, really all you need to know is just kind of an overview of how the law works, how court cases work. And then you just need to know the substantive area that deals with your case. So I'm actually thinking of doing it. I'm going to launch just a program where I can teach people those things, and then, provide forms and templates. And honestly, if you have a good template and just somebody to coach you through how to do a lawsuit, you could really do it yourself. It's not rocket science. So I just want to say, people get really intimidated by the law, but if you have somebody that knows what they're doing, can coach you on how to do it, you can definitely be your own lawyer.
Yeah, and I would say on the school district side, we're closing in on about $20,000 to $30,000 is probably what this is going to cost. I talked from a couple of board members in Round Rock ISD that are being persecuted there by the administration and have had to take them to court, and they ended up spending about $60,000. So it's they got censured and had to take action against the school board, and that's kind of the same position I am. But I think we'll probably end up around $20,000 to $30,000 total.
Yeah, it costs a lot if you have to pay an attorney to do it, which is why we need more lawsuits like this, because we need to overwhelm them with litigation, and I think if we empower people with the knowledge they need to bring their own lawsuits, learn how to be their own attorneys when they can't afford it, I think we'll start winning more battles.
I bet they really come after you then, Paul.
Oh, you have no idea. So they have filed, and I can't say who because it's confidential, but some people involved in this dispute filed a false bar grievance against me to try to get me suspended from the practice of law, contained 2 blatant lies that I can prove are lies. And so, we're going back after them for that, because, you can't do that. You cannot do that. But, now I had to spend like 5 days making a detailed response. And it took a ton of time at a time when I'm having to fight this lawsuit and fight 3 motions to dismiss. So, there's no depth to which they won't stoop, in going after you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the more giving power back to the people, whatever that is, including being able to take legal action against injustices without being strapped to, funding tens of thousands of dollars for a lawyer. Yeah, they're going to say, what? Let's go after Paul. I don't know if we want him to give people this kind of knowledge. There was a quick question about, do you have a defense to avoid judge sealing discovery records?
I'm not sure what that question means. A defense.
Well, and someone said you shouldn't be able to because they're public records, like with the school board stuff. And then I guarantee our private discussions they don't want to get out, text, etc. For the lawsuit.
Is this okay? They're talking about sealing records in a lawsuit or in a public records request.
I think with your lawsuit against the school board president.
Oh, I mean, I don't think any of the discovery is going to be sealed. I mean, nothing is really. The only thing that's confidential is the bar grievance that was filed against me. But other than that, I don't think that's going to be an issue in this case. But what is an issue is, and the reason they did this is. I mean, I don't have the funds to carry a lawsuit. A lot of lawyers have won big verdicts and stuff. I've been in law firms for a long time. I don't have that kind of capital. And so they're going to try to bleed me dry with just, filing. And that's why they filed 3 motions to dismiss and a bar grievance against me. And so basically my law firm took a loss this month because we haven't been able to raise enough money. So, that's what we need.
Well, I feel your pain. I lost my job too. I mean, I was fired too for my YouTube channel. So, because I interview people who are censored and, doctors and scientists who were questioning vaccine mandates. And I worked for the state shooting videos on wildfire for the Department of Natural Resources. After I got out of TV, that was like my side job, my day job. And then, I kept the podcast separate and everything. But they caught on, even though they knew I had it, they then saw that I was interviewing people who are, legitimate authorities that were questioning like not just the legal, but the scientific reasons for these mandates. And they told me I had to stop talking to people like that or else I was going to get fired. And I just kept doing the video. So they did in fact fire me. So I feel your pain, Paul. But there's life on the other side. I try to tell people all the time because I know a lot of folks are afraid and, still dealing with some of these issues and aren't sure what's going to happen with their employment or whatnot. And it can be unsettling because there's not just the finances of the job, but like health insurance and stuff like that. But you're figuring it out. I know it's a kind of rough road, not necessarily easy all the time. And we had to fix some stuff too. And we're still trying to figure things out. But I sleep really well at night, and I'm free and there's not really I don't think there's a price tag for that. So there's quite a bit of value I found on the other side of standing up for what you believe and, and then just jumping in and letting yourself sort of, build something new, totally new and just see where you go.
I mean, that you said that perfectly because I think one problem in our country is that, all the woke corporations have been weaponized against we the people. And if you do something that's outside the spectrum of what you're allowed to do and say, according to the left, then you could lose your job. And so that has a chilling effect on people, being activists and speaking out. But, we can't let that constrain us because like, if you believe in God, like you got to know that God's going to take care of you if you're doing the right thing. And if you don't believe in God, believe in yourself, believe in your ability to go out and make something happen, because it's like, I got fired and, it took a little bit, but I put something together and I'm surviving. And I'm, like you said, I sleep well at night. And it's because I'm free. I would honestly, it is stressful to face a month and be like, I don't know where I'm going to get income this month. But, the figuring that out, the stress of figuring that out, I would rather have that than being micromanaged at some corporation and not being free to, manage my own schedule and implement my own ideas. So there is a trade-off there.
So there were just some questions before we wrap about get the give, send, go. Does this help the lawsuit too? Or is this just for, okay.
That's Chad's. So he's trying to raise money for the lawsuit that we're going to bring for him against the school board members because they have, did this ridiculous investigation and, censured him. And it's a very defamatory document, and it's in retaliation for him exercising his First Amendment rights. And so there's that. And then, so that's for that lawsuit. For ours, it's a give, send, go, and it's just /fight MISD. So pretty simple, just fight MISD. And that raises money for our current lawsuit now, and then, other ones that we're going to bring specifically to get the books out.
Okay, I'm trying to find that. Because where else could they follow you too, Paul? You have a podcast and everything?
I do. So best place to I'm most active on Instagram. I have a lot more followers on TikTok, but I like Instagram, and so I'm most active there if people want to follow me there. I'm trying to build up my True Social too. I'm trying to be more active on that. So I'm also on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Getter. All of them. So if you just find at Fired Up Texas Lawyer on any platform, I'm probably there.
Okay. And I think this is the other lawsuit here.
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Okay. And so the best way, like if someone says, hey, I want to take Paul's training on how to be my own attorney, how should they contact you?
Right now, just follow my Instagram and stay tuned because I'll be making announcements there. I'll push it out to other platforms too, but that would be the best way to stay informed on what I'm doing. I'm about to start making some videos talking about that project if you go to fireduptxlawyer.com, it'll ask for your email, and you can subscribe to our a newsletter to stay informed as well. That's probably the best way, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. Give your website a quick plug. Anything else that you all want to discuss before we go?
Yeah, I would say, if you've been sitting on the couch for a while and really haven't wanted to get involved in politics, I understand where you are. But there's a time where you could be upset and do nothing. And we're way outside of that time now. If you do nothing now and you're upset, you're not helping anybody. So I would really encourage you to become a precinct chair, start walking blocks, start trying to help get conservatives in office, and run for an office yourself. It's common, everyday people that are making the difference here in the state of Texas. It is not the people that have been in power for the last 20 years. So just gut up and let's go on and take these people on head on. And
Chad, you is that how people should you changed your lower third, so 5-Star Innovation LLC at gmail.com is how people should get in touch with you?
Yeah, if you want to email me, that would probably be the best way to email me.
Okay, guys. Paul, any final thoughts before we go?
No, this has been great. Thank you so much for having us on. And I mean, we're in a dogfight. We need all the help we can get. We need all the prayer we can get. And we really appreciate the support.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody who's been watching on all the different platforms. I think we did this whole one on YouTube, so that doesn't always happen with my guests. So no complaints that I didn't ever give you guys anything on YouTube. We'll keep in touch. You guys come back on if there are any developments. I appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you, Allison.